Hi, everybody. I'm Christina from Big Beautiful Sky. Welcome. Today, we're going to talk about Black Moon Lilith. I'm going to put Black Moon Lilith in context with Virginia Giuffre. I think that's how you say her name, and Sarah McLachlan. Two very different stories, but ultimately, I think they both represent the energy of Black Moon Lilith very well. Okay. First things first, to understand the energy of Black Moon Lilith, you have to sit back and think about the society that we live in and the rules that we're supposed to follow. At some point, I hope you realize that you did not need to follow these rules. You had to stop playing by these rules, especially considering a lot of the rules that we have don't really serve us. And that's really where Lilith comes in. Lilith in mythology was unwilling to be subservient. One of the myths associated with Lilith is that she left Adam for the desert, where she could live as a woman unto herself. That really reminds me of Georgia O'Keeffe. If you know the backstory, Georgia O'Keeffe was married. She lived in, I think, New York City on the East Coast. And eventually she just fled and moved to New Mexico, where she lived out this amazing life, creating these beautiful paintings. I think she had female lovers there as well. So in the desert, she could be her authentic self. She rebelled. She left the world behind and entered the world of creativity. In mythology, Lilith does not submit to rules or the rules of God, right? Our current rules weren't made for women by women. So the best thing a woman can do, especially, is not follow the rules. And one of the keys to freedom is finding out where Black Moon Lilith sits in your chart. Find out the sign, house, the aspects. This is the key to unlocking the rejected parts of yourself that people said weren't nice, were ugly, parts of you that you had to repress so that you could play small, people please, be the good girl or boy. Black Moon Lilith, it's a wonderful energy once you really tap into it because it does not give a F. Black Moon Lilith is raw, unbridled, authentic, and unapologetically herself or himself. Look, Black Moon Lilith, it applies to men and women, and we'll talk about this. So if you're looking for authenticity, Black Moon Lilith is your doorway. I highly encourage you to check her out. In both men and women, Black Moon Lilith symbolizes the rejection of the patriarchy. Now, let's unpack this word a little bit because I don't like it anymore. When I think about the patriarchy, I think about patriarchal monotheistic religions and governments. To me, it is not necessarily male dominated. It is a system of exploitation, extraction, control, abuse, power over. Both men and women operate within this system. It is internalized. A lot of people are saying now, oh, women need to run the world. Oh, we need to go back to matriarchy. No, there are women running the world right now who are horrendous. It doesn't matter who is running things. What matters is the system we're operating in. So going forward in where we are now in 2026, I think the best way to operate is to say, is this pro-human? Is this good for humans? Does it help humanity or is it anti-human? Is this bad for us? Is someone trying to have power and control? Is someone trying to extract and exploit? Is there abuse? Men and women need to unite. I'm tired of this polarity, left, right, male, female, blah, blah, blah. We need to come together and understand that it's us versus them. And when I say them, I'm talking about the people who are operating in the system of control, power, abuse, exploitation, extraction, those people. Yes, everyone in the Epstein list. Rather than embrace the patriarchy, which so many of us are still doing, we need to reject it. And we can do that by understanding the myth of Lilith, Adam's first wife, who refused to be subservient. So because she did not agree with or go along with what Adam and God were saying, she was, of course, demonized because all rebels are. In astrology, Black Moon Lilith is the lunar apogee. It's the point in the moon's orbit where it's furthest away from Earth. So it's really just a point, which makes it even more mysterious and obscure. Lilith represents empowerment through embracing the suppressed parts of the self, otherwise known as the shadow. So with Black Moon Lilith, the truth will set you free, but only if you unleash the shadow first. Be unwielding, be uncontrollable, be wild, be feral, have a mind of your own, and rebel with a cause. Don't follow the rules. That's how you're going to start to really unpack and unleash this energy. And of course, do the shadow work, process your trauma, get in and look at the very scary, ugly pieces and parts of yourself. It's okay. The more that you do that, the more ferocious and wild and untamed you will become. And that is what we need right now. Now, one of the things that I found really interesting is that in 2025, especially, I started to feel Black Moon Lilith very powerfully. It was not really aspecting anything in my chart, but collectively, I could feel her. And I could feel her especially during October and November of 2025. She was in Scorpio. She was forming a grand water trine with Saturn and Jupiter. And that's when all this Epstein stuff started to unravel and come out. That's when Virginia Giuffre published her book. That's when, unfortunately, she also decided to leave this world. But because of what she did and everything that came out and the truth that we could all finally see, it unleashed this wrath, this anger, this women were, there's not even a word for it. Enraged isn't even a strong enough emotion. So let's talk a little bit about Lilith and the snake. She's often symbolically linked with serpents, the Ouroboros. She represents transformation, renewal, and of course, the challenge to patriarchal norms. In one myth dating back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, the figure associated with Lilith appears alongside a serpent living at the base of a sacred tree in the goddess Inanna's garden. And that's one of the earliest connections between Lilith-like figures and serpent symbolism. Her most well-known association comes from medieval Jewish mystical text. In the Zohar, which was written around the 13th century, one of Lilith's names is actually Serpent. And the text describes how Lilith's demonic partner rode the serpent of Eden, and it describes the serpent as having seduced holy Eve before Adam, linking Lilith directly to the serpent's role in the Garden of Eden. The Victorian poet Dante Gabriel Rossetti portrayed Lilith convincing the serpent to loan her a reptilian shape so that she could return to Eden disguised as a snake to tempt Eve and Adam. Michelangelo depicted the serpent in the Garden of Eden on the Sistine Chapel ceiling as a red-headed woman understood to be Lilith. And in his painting Lilith from 1887, English artist John Collier portrayed her as a golden-haired, porcelain-skinned, nude woman who fondles a serpent's head on her shoulder, coiled around her body in passionate embrace. And when I see these depictions of Lilith and the serpent, what comes through to me is that power comes from embracing the dark, rejected parts of yourself, the hidden, the shamed, the angry, the unloved. Lilith tells you exactly what you need to do. Do the healing work. Extract yourself from this system of exploitation and abuse. Now, let's talk about Virginia Giuffre, Epstein, Prince Andrew, and everything that happened in October and November of 2025. I hope I'm saying Virginia's last name correctly. I really don't know how to pronounce it. Black Moon Lilith, like I said before, formed part of this grand water trine with Jupiter and Saturn during October and November. And the energy was just so deep and dark. There was this purge. It was like the truth had finally been dredged from the depths of our collective shadow. I didn't really know what to expect from that configuration, but now that everything's come up and I've had a chance to look at everyone's charts, I understand it now. So it makes sense that Lilith and Scorpio, which is just amplifying the themes of sex, lies, deception, was all about this next chapter in the Epstein files and the release of Virginia's book. Virginia decided to tell the truth about Epstein's ring after the birth of her daughter on January 7th, 2010. Now, This also coincides with her Black Moon Lilith return in Aquarius. This is not a coincidence. In a 2019 interview with Glamour, Virginia revealed that when her daughter was born, she was overwhelmed by the thought of abuse she had survived, and that looking at her newborn daughter made it impossible to stay silent. She said, I just couldn't imagine bringing her into a world where I know what happened to me and I know what I went through. When you give birth, all your trauma comes up. Everything that's ever happened to you in your life, especially within the context of abuse, comes up with the birth of that child. Now, I'm going to do a sidebar. When women give birth, not only are we processing, we have just become a mother and the tremendous amount of responsibility that is placed upon us, the incredible amount of trauma that we go through to physically give birth, but also if we experienced abuse during our childhood, that trauma too comes up to be looked at. So when people talk about postnatal depression, I don't know if that's being factored in, but it should be. Yes, hormone levels affect your brain. Sure. The isolation of motherhood can cause mental health problems. Yes. But you're also going through all the trauma that you experienced throughout your childhood. And as women, we all have plenty. So, something to remember if you are going to become a mother soon, or if you have recently given birth, or if you just need to process something around giving birth. Please get in touch. I'm here to support you. BigBeautifulSky.com. Okay, back to Virginia. When she gave birth to her daughter, she was having her Black Moon Lilith return. She explained that she felt a duty to protect her daughter and ensure that other children would not suffer the same abuse. She said, we've got to do something. We've got to hold these people accountable. So she began to take steps to expose the trafficking ring, becoming the first of Epstein's victims to drop her anonymity in 2011. So, yes, astrologically, with Lilith and Aquarius, it makes sense that Virginia took down an entire web and network of traffickers. And with Black Moon Lilith and Scorpio during 2025, not only did Virginia's death and book release trigger the removal of Prince Andrew's royal titles, but it also shut down the entire US government because the president did not want to release these emails. So it had quite an impact. And now in 2026, we've seen more and more emails and this deep, extensive web of famous and powerful people who were complicit in this ring and actively participating in the abuse, including the current US president. Congress announced it would vote on a bill to release the files on November 12, 2025. The sun was at 20 degrees Scorpio and Black Moon Lilith was trine Saturn and Jupiter at 25 degrees, forming that grand water trine. The Epstein Files Transparency Act was a law passed by the 119th U.S. Congress, and it was signed by Donald Trump on November 19th, 2025. The day before, on November 18th, when Congress voted, Black Moon Lilith was conjunct the sun in Scorpio at 26 degrees, still forming part of that grand water trine with Saturn and Jupiter. It just was such a Black Moon Lilith theme. Thomas Massey, one of the congressmen who's leading the charge to release the files, he has Mars at 24 degrees Scorpio. Transiting Lilith was conjunct his Mars during November. So he's been an avid fighter in the release of these files. Ro Khanna, who's another congressman fighting for the release of the files, he has Lilith in Scorpio at 13 degrees natally. And in November, during the file release, transiting Lilith in Scorpio is trine his Mars and North Node in Cancer. So both these men are fighting for the release, fighting for the truth, disrupting this system. Black Moon Lilith is just as powerful in women as it is in men. Women, there are plenty of male allies out there for you. We have to stop demonizing all men. There are plenty of men who have daughters, who love their daughters, who don't want to see this happen to them. So find allies. I know there's a lot of rage and there's a lot of anger and devastation, and you have to process that. But please don't blame all men. Virginia's book was published on October 21st, 2025, when Mercury and Mars were at 20 degrees Scorpio, conjunct Black Moon Lilith at 23 degrees Scorpio, still forming that trine with Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. The moon was 0 degrees Scorpio as well. It was just super potent scorpionic energy blast. Prince Andrew lost his world title on October 30th, 2025, a few days later. His natal moon is at 25 degrees Scorpio, and transiting Black Moon Lilith was conjunct his natal moon and Mars, and it formed part of that grand water trine. So if you look at Virginia and Andrew's synastry, her Black Moon Lilith in Aquarius is directly opposite Andrew's Uranus and Leo in his first house. Now, that's also conjunct Virginia's sun. So it's no wonder their meeting dramatically changed his life. She would and did take him down. That was always going to happen. Now, deep breath. That's enough about Epstein. I want to talk about Sarah McLachlan because at the end of September, the documentary about the Lilith Fair dropped, and it was almost like these Lilith themes were just bubbling up from about September to December. If you haven't seen Lilith Fair, Building a Mystery, The Untold Story, it is a beautiful documentary. It is all about Sarah McLachlan and the Lilith Fair, and it premiered on Disney Hulu on the exact day of the solar eclipse on September 21st, 2025. And again, once we unpack the astrology, it's crazy. I highly encourage you to check out Lilith Fair. There are playlists on Spotify. There's tons of documentaries on YouTube. It was groundbreaking. It was amazing. I was quite young when it was touring around, and I wish I had gone. It was a groundbreaking festival celebrating women in music, founded by singer-songwriter Sarah McLachlan, her manager Terry McBride, and talent agent Marty Diamond. It ran from 1997 to 1999 and was briefly revived in 2010. Now, the festival was revolutionary because it was the first major festival to feature only female artists and female-fronted bands. And at this time, the music industry still believed that all female lineups wouldn't sell tickets. So the festival proved that this assumption was spectacularly wrong, and it became one of the most successful touring festivals of the late 1990s. According to Sarah McLachlan, the name, of course, came from Jewish folklore about Lilith, Adam's first wife, who refused to be subservient and left the Garden of Eden. It was such a fitting symbol for the festival because it was celebrating women's independence and artistic voices. Again, harken back to Georgia O'Keeffe. I need to look at her Lilith. Artists who performed included Sarah McLachlan, Sheryl Crow, Jewel, Fiona Apple, Emmylou Harris, the Indigo Girls, Tracy Chapman, Erykah Badu, Suzanne Vega, and many others that spanned folk rock, R&B, and all the alternative genres. And beyond the music, Lilith Fair promoted women's causes with a portion of proceeds going to local and national women's charities at each tour stop. So over its 3-year run, Lilith Fair raised over $10 million for various organizations, including Planned Parenthood and Women's Healthcare, with $1 from every ticket sold going to a local charity. The festival also helped launch and boost the careers of several female artists and demonstrated that women could dominate the music industry commercially and artistically. Lilith Fair remains an important cultural moment in music history. I'm getting so many chills talking about this. According to Sarah McLachlan, Lilith Fair is a celebration of women in music and the fact that we have a voice. If you look at the tribal chart, you can see that Sarah McLachlan has her natal Black Moon Lilith at 14 degrees Taurus in her 5th house, which fits this story beautifully. In Taurus, it's an earth sign that rules the throat. In the 5th house, the Leo, it's ruled by the sun. It's associated with performance, leadership, self-expression, and creativity. So it's no wonder freedom came to Sarah through singing and forming a women's music festival. The first Lilith Fair concert was held at the Gorge in George, Washington on July 5th, 1997. If you look at the chart, Black Moon Lilith falls at the top of Sarah's chart in the 9th house at 12 degrees Virgo, trine her natal Black Moon Lilith at 14 degrees Taurus. Sweet. Now, Eris is also prominent in these charts. Eris is a dwarf planet that was discovered in 2005. Astrologically, it's associated with discord, disruption, empowerment, and challenging the status quo. And Eris is often classified as a troublemaker, but not in a negative way. She works with Lilith in that her energy brings awareness to inequality, suppressed desire, and the need for personal authenticity. by shaking up situations where injustice, conformity, and complacency exist. The first Lilith Fair concert also had Eris and Aries at 19 degrees conjunct Saturn. Eris was also in Aries when the Lilith Fair documentary launched on September 21st, 2025. So there's a few things showing up when the first concert was held and then the documentary aired. There are a few repeating themes. Eris is one of them. Now, what Sarah McLachlan said in the documentary was one of the things that I love about Lilith is that we can just be ourselves. In Aries, Eris is an independent rebel who takes direct action against injustice, challenges authority, and serves as a catalyst for others through empowerment. In the fourth house, Sarah's drive for autonomy and personal expression in her music was rooted in her early family and/or emotional experiences, which she explains in the documentary. Through the traveling caravan that was Lilith Fair, she created an alternative version of home for herself and the women on tour. And if you look at her chart, she launched Lilith Fair in 1997 when the nodes were at 22 degrees Virgo, and they were on her natal Pluto at 22 degrees Virgo in her ninth house at the top of her chart. But when the documentary premiered on September 21st, 2025, the nodes were reversed, with the south node at 18 degrees Virgo and the north node at 18 degrees Pisces. So in both instances, the nodes activated her Pluto, and it brought this karmic focus to her personal transformation and empowerment. It doesn't get any more karmic than that. With the north node in Virgo, her fate was activated. And in 2025, with the documentary and the south node in Virgo, it was like, let's review the impact of that action. And it was proven to be incredibly groundbreaking and successful. Another thing to note is that the documentary launched on September 21st, 2025, during a solar eclipse in Virgo at 28 degrees, directly on Sarah's natal Uranus in the ninth house. So the eclipse was also on Lilith Fair's ascendant at 29 degrees Virgo, which is also conjunct Sarah's natal Uranus. So yes, revolutionary, groundbreaking, and innovative across the board if you look at both charts. Some quotes from the documentary that I just love that perfectly described what Black Moon Lilith represents were, quote, "Women are not supposed to be played back to back on the radio. They said it was too much. People would change the channel. That never made sense to me," Sarah McLachlan. Quote, "I was raised not to open my mouth or say anything. My mom was incredibly strict. I wasn't allowed to go out and do anything. I didn't have any friends. I could not be myself at home. I was grounded for most of my adolescence." Again, Sarah McLachlan talking about her childhood, and you can see that in her chart. "My mom told me, 'Don't go thinking you're anything special. You're going to fail.' Well, that sucks. I don't believe that. My mom was the first one to push me towards having belief in myself by telling me I wasn't good enough." Again, Sarah McLachlan used that to fuel this incredibly impactful festival. From Sheryl Crow, quote, "The feminine energy usurped the ego. With women, there is more of a communal thing." This is another quote from Sarah McLachlan. "You can't put women on the same bill. People won't come. If you did, it's called a PUSSY package. And there was a weird stigma around that. That put a huge fire under my butt to prove them wrong. The first person I called was Paula Cole. Paula Cole said, quote, "Lilith Fair is a metaphor for what could be in other areas of life." And from Sarah McLachlan, quote, "There were many times I wanted to say F you," which is so Black Moon Lilith. From Dan Levy, who attended the festival, and I think he also produced the documentary, quote, "Being there was one of the earliest memories I have of safety." From Natalie Merchant, quote, "Nobody missed her set ever. She would walk out on stage, open her mouth, and the sound. One of the most chilling sounds I have ever heard was Sinead crying Fire in Babylon through a massive wall of speakers to 35,000 people." The reason I put this in, because I feel like Sinead was the original whistleblower back in, gosh, was it 1992? When she was on SNL and she ripped up a photo of Pope John Paul II, who was in the Epstein files. She was telling us exactly what was going on. So it's no wonder she was the headliner at Lilith Fair. From one of the festival organizers, quote, "Lilith was an incubation of female talent in front of and behind the stage. And I think we created something wonderful." Again, this is from another festival organizer. Quote, we made sure everyone had healthcare. It was the first time a lot of these women could send their kids to the dentist. So, unlike a lot of other festivals, they made sure everyone who was hired to put on the festival had health insurance, which was groundbreaking at the time. So, this is Lilith. Lilith doesn't follow the rules. So, wherever Lilith shows up in your chart, that is where you're meant to break with the status quo and forge your own path. And what did Sarah McLachlan go on to do after the Lilith Fair? Well, she continued her career as an artist. She founded 3 free music schools for disadvantaged kids in Canada, and she raised a family. She became a mom. So she didn't follow the rules. And by not following the rules, life is so much better. It's so much more meaningful, and it's ultimately your own. Now, in 1999, the last year of Lilith Fair, there was a Woodstock revival that turned into a riot. And at Woodstock, 4 women were raped. While men at the mainstream music festivals burned and pillaged, the attendees at Lilith Fair simply enjoyed the music. The dichotomy is shocking. The 1999 was in America when I was there. It was the last year of innocence because 1999 not only was Woodstock this absolute disgrace, but Columbine happened. And then 2000 and 2001, the country just started to go downhill. So from Sarah McLachlan again, quote, if we want to change things, we have to build systems for us. So what I've been saying over and over again is right now in 2026, the old systems are crumbling. They are falling apart. Do not hold on to them. Let them go and focus on building new systems that are good for humanity. Now, because of Lilith Fair, female artists sold millions of records, topped the charts, and finally brought home a slew of Grammy Awards. All because Sarah McLachlan didn't like the idea that you couldn't play too many female songs on the radio or book a tour with more than one female artist. She didn't like the rules, so she made her own. She not only changed the industry, but she changed our consciousness and she changed the perception of what it means to be a female artist. It was a tour that was jam-packed with some of the most talented musicians in the world. There was a cross-section of races, genres, personalities, and they all blended together to create something that had never been done before. So again, it was the biggest FU and no. 2 of the best things that you can say when you're really harnessing Lilith's energy. It's Lilith's energy is suppressed in people who continue to follow the rules. To unearth it, let out the rage. The rage is usually sitting on top of this deep despair that's blocking our true expression. So I highly encourage you to take stock in your life, especially where you feel frustrated and in your body when you don't want to do something. And I encourage you to say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do this instead and start creating and start getting involved in new things. And once you unleash that, there's no going back. It's worth it though. Sarah and Virginia proved it with their entire lives. Look at how much they changed. 2 women. So please reach out if you need support. I am here for you at bigbeautifulsky.com. Bye.